and welcome to our second video looking at our 2020 Vision event. I'm Melody.
And I'm Rachel.
And today we're going to talk to you a little bit about the context of the Methodist Church and why we feel like this event is really, really needed. So Rachel, you have been doing some thinking around this.
I have. And I've got a lovely graph to show you.
Oh, shall we have a look at it?
Yeah, let's. So this graph is a graph of the membership of the whole of the Methodist Church since its early days in the 1700s up to now. And it just shows us the sort of life of the Methodist Church as a whole, if you like.
It does, and I can see just by looking at it quite clearly that it has been in decline for just over 100 years?
Yeah, I think the peak here is the early 1900s. And it feels to me, when I look at it, that I've grown up in the Methodist Church, and for my whole lifetime, the church has been in that steepest bit of decline. And yet it feels like we've only recently begun to talk about it. And it feels like we've buried our heads in the sand a little bit, because why haven't we picked up this trend before?
Yeah.
And why now are we only beginning to realise we need to do something about it?
And so how does this graph then link to our 2020 Vision event?
I think it links in two ways, in terms of what it tells us and what it doesn't tell us.
Okay.
So let's think about what it does tell us. Every year, every church in the Methodist Church sends in its figures every year, its membership, growth, decline, changes, how many people are attending worship. But I know when I did that as a circuit minister, it was very rarely, if at all, that we put each year together and saw what our graph for our own church looked like. And so I think it's helpful in that it enables churches, as looking at their own figures as well as the whole church, to just stand back and look at the bigger picture. And because if we're going to tackle it and look at how do we reverse or change the story of decline, if we're honest about where we are, where are we starting from today, and we've been realistic about it. In terms of what it doesn't tell us, that's a bit trickier, isn't it?
Yeah.
And how do you read what something doesn't tell us? And I think that's where the discernment bit of our 2020 Vision Day comes in. Let me explain by telling you a story. Before I became a Methodist minister, I trained as a primary school teacher. And I can remember my first time in the classroom on teaching practice. And our tutors sent us in, and for the first week, to choose one child and write down what we noticed, what we observed about them. At the end of the week, my tutor came in and she sat down with me and said, "Tell me what you've written, what have you noticed?" So I sat down and told her that this child, let's call him James. James couldn't tie his shoelaces. James couldn't do up his tie at the end of PE. He wasn't very good at interacting with his classmates. James didn't run. He was a bit awkward as he moved. And the conversation went on in this way, and she stopped me, and my tutor asked me, "That's really good, because we know what he can't do. But what did you notice about what he can do? What is he good at? What really lights up his eyes? What does he get excited about? What does he enjoy in the classroom and in his day in school?" And I couldn't answer the question. And it made me, or taught me, to look at the class and the children in it in a totally different way. And I think what this graph doesn't tell us is those things that we can focus on that give us life, that give us joy, that reveal what our gifts and strengths are, that God is calling us to use in a unique way where we are. And that's hard sometimes to recognise if we only focus on the downward movement of the graph.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely key, isn't it? In that God has gifted all of us as individuals and in our churches with so many gifts and skills and talents, and he's equipped us to spread the gospel and to make followers, to make disciples of Jesus Christ. And I think that it's taking the vision of God's future for our church, isn't it? And yes, acknowledging the past 100 years and saying this is a reality, But what is our vision? What's our future? What does that hold for us? Dare I say revival? You know, a refreshment across all the churches. Where is God going to take us? What's the next step?
That's right. But it's important to hold those two things together, because if we just focus on the decline and the reality of where we are, we neglect the good things, as with James in the classroom. But if we just focus on the good things and what we can do, we take our eye off on the bigger picture and don't see actually where we are. And it's holding those two things together and asking in the midst, what is God saying to us? Because God, as you say, has given us all that we need for the church to grow. So what is God saying to us?
And so how does all of this then fit in to our 2020 vision event, into our themes for the day?
Well, our 4 themes for the 2020 vision event are vision, discernment, leadership, and mission and growth. And during the day, we're going to have 4 keynote speakers who are going to address each one of those. And I think they fit in really well with where we are as a church. And how do we discern what is God's vision when we could choose lots of good things to do in the life of our church? But what is the one thing that is unique to us where we are, that God is saying, this is your gift to your community, this is what I'm calling you to do, this is where I'm sending you to go, this is how you are to be my church and disciples of Jesus where you are. And those 4 themes help us to think about that and where we're starting from today.
So what's God saying to you?
Well, I think God is saying to me, hold these 2 things together. Keep an eye on my big picture, I think God is saying. What is God's big picture for us as a church? And what is the one thing that I am calling you to do, that only you can do where you are, where God has placed you?
The event is going to be fabulous. We can say this. It is.
Okay.
We are fully confident the event will be brilliant. So please do save the date, 29th of February 2020, for our 2020 Vision event. And you can now book in. We are on Eventbrite.
We are.
And we are on Facebook if you want to follow us on there as well. I think the details are going to come on the screen. Thank you so much for being with us and for watching. And we'll see you again next month.